Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. A while ago, Yul Vasquez, who's been on the show, was posting about this new show coming on MGM Plus, which is a great network. If you don't have it, you got to subscribe. And it was called Hotel Cocaine, and the costumes look great, the cast looks great. And I said to Joanne, I said, honey, we're going to watch the show together, and if you don't want to watch it from the beginning, you're going to have to catch up because I'm not missing episodes. And it's funny because my guest is actually on two shows that we watched together. In fact, there was a cold case rerun at midnight last night here in Philly. And he's a wonderful actor. He's great in the show Hotel Cocaine. And my guest is Danny Pino. How you doing, Danny?
Good, Steve. Thank you for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I want to start off with the show. And I know both you and Yul are both of Cuban descent. You're both from Miami. So did that play an integral part of getting this project off the ground? Or what was the whole process of getting you guys involved and then getting the show made?
Well, for me, the beginning of the project started with Yul Vasquez giving me a phone call and giving me sort of his elevator pitch. Miami, 1978, The Mutiny Club, written by Chris Brancato from Narcos, and we play brothers. And that was it. That's how it all started, and then it snowballed from there. No pun intended.
So now, yeah, exactly. So now, what do you remember of that time? Because you were born in '74. So when that was going on, you would have been 4. Do you remember any of Cuba, Miami, Cuba scene on back then, or what was your experience with it?
One of my maybe earliest memories, sort of foundational memories, was going with my grandfather, my abuelo Gonzalo, to San Juan Bosco, a little church in Little Havana. And he was praying, and he was lighting candles, the old school way where you light this long, wooden stick, and then you'd go and you'd light the appropriate candles. And I remember getting a little too close to the candles, and I was wearing a polyester shirt. And I remember my grandfather having to put out the fire that was, starting to spread on my polyester shirt. So, I do remember that brown patterned polyester shirt. I remember, I have very vivid memories. Actually, I have here's my grandfather right here.
Okay.
There's Abuelo Gonzalo, and that's me right there with him. So that'll be in the 70s. I remember, certain aspects of that. I remember his handkerchief, his cologne, and a lot of those things I utilize as Roman Compte. Roman carries a handkerchief, and I spent about 3 days looking for vetiver, which is what my grandfather wore back in the day, that cologne. And so, you can't smell it on the show, but that is what Roman smells like. That's what, that transports me back to that time. And it gets me sort of centered.
Now, when did you start becoming aware of why your grandfather left Cuba? And in the whole show, your character leaves Cuba, you and your brother. So at what age did you start finding out, what went on? Because my dad was in T-Day, and he never told me until 25 years ago. He never talked about it. It was something until he was written up in some French magazine about his boat that he was a quartermaster. So he never talked about it. Did your grandfather talk about what was going on in Cuba, why they were fleeing, and the whole Castro situation? Or were you sort of up in the air when you were younger?
Yeah, with family gatherings, we were a very tight knit family of pretty large family. So I grabbed bits and pieces of how it is and why it was that we were, in Little Havana rather than in Havana. My first language was Spanish. That was not uncommon for first generation Cubans in Miami, Cuban Americans in Miami. I feel like when you sit around the domino table, when you sit around during Nochebuena and everybody's enjoying some lechon, when, the family's sitting around smoking cigars and having a little rum and, the nostalgia of Cuba and that very fervent feeling of betrayal that still exists surrounding the Cuban Revolution and Castro and Bay of Pigs and some incredibly volatile moments, turbulent and difficult, especially for that generation, for my grandparents' generation, for my parents' generation, who ultimately paid the biggest price, leaving their homeland as exiles. I think one of the unique things about Cubans is that we were never, a majority were not north-facing. Cubans, the majority of Cubans were south-facing. They were, not coming to the United States to stay. They were hoping to come to the United States as exiles and to reclaim their motherland and to return eventually in a free and democratic Cuba. And we've been waiting for 65 years.
So the show is, the show does really hit on those everything that's going on, and it's great. And I got to ask you, what's it like? You're number one on the call sheet. In your past, you've always been on great casts, and this is a great cast. But on this show, you are definitely like first name, number one on the call sheet. What responsibilities do you have as an actor to be number one on the call sheet? Because I've always heard that can make or break a show. Like they say, Mark Harmon was a great number one. Mariska Hargitay, who you worked with, was a great number one. What going in, and you've worked with strong people in the past, what responsibilities did you feel being the man? And people, if you don't know, number one means the first person listed on the call sheet. What did you, what responsibilities did you feel you had to bring?
Well, first of all, I feel like on our show, number one, somebody has to be marked off as number one. But I feel like there are many number ones on our call sheet. When you look at our ensemble, and you brought up Yule first. He's an incredible actor. You talk about Mark Feuerstein, who's a fantastic actor in his own right, has been number one on his own shows. Michael Chiklis, who has had an incredible career, and I had the honor of working with him on The Shield when he was number one on that call sheet. So, and I think if you go down the list of our cast, you'll see that there are several number ones, potential number ones, future number ones on our call sheet. And so it makes it so that we all take ownership of it. We're all taking ownership of this show. And, you bring up a great point. I have learned a lot from working with some exceptional number ones. Catherine Morris on Cold Case, who brought up Mariska. Michael Chiklis. It has been, if you pay attention and you look for moments to really grow and bolster yourself as an artist, but also as a person, as a leader, you'll learn a lot. And I've been very fortunate to be in that position over and over and over again. And so, on Hotel Cocaine, playing Roman Compte, Cuban American, born in Cuba, who fought in the Bay of Pigs, who is as dominant in Spanish as he is in English, who's a family man, who's family first. There's so many similarities between myself, my family, my experience, my heritage, and Roman, that to take ownership of that, I found, being number one on the call sheet is, I think the number is not important. I think what's important is that the show, the point of view of the writer, in this case, Chris Brancato, Michael Paynes, and a fantastic writer's room, a lot of the point of view of the show is funneled through that character. And so to feel the responsibility of not only playing Roman Compte, who actually existed, and is the father of Maurice Compte, a colleague of mine on Mayans MC, fellow actor, fellow thespian, and producer on our show, the responsibility of playing that character and having that point of view, and have that point of view be authentic, and something that my parents' generation, who will sit down and watch our show, who have enjoyed our show, and I've received texts and phone calls saying, your show got it. You understood what it was like to be in Miami in the late 70s. In fact, you made it better. You actually elevated, the mutiny on our show is bigger, it's more beautiful, it's more lavish, it's, more entertaining. There all of these things that I feel that could potentially be misrepresented, or potentially, sullied in a way. I feel the responsibility of that for sure. And I feel incredibly lucky to have a partner like Chris Brancato and Michael Paynes, who listen to me and understand that, that is largely my experience, my family's experience, my culture's experience is, largely what you're seeing when you see the family ties of our show.
Well, that's something that's important too, yeah, because when you watch a show, at first glance, when people hear a title, Hotel Cocaine, you know what they're thinking. You see the flashy hotel, and that's just Feuerstein, so great in his character, just the eccentric nut. I mean, always wearing something different, and you're like, okay, I know a guy like that. But what's good is it's not, as you said, it's so much more. It really concentrates. It shows you're very vulnerable and how much you care about your family, and it's not that run-of-the-mill, bang, 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 Scarface, drug, this, and this. And I think that's important that, you convey that very good, because you can tell. You're like, man, this guy really cares about his family. I mean, you and your daughter, I mean, it's great. I mean, the scenes are great, but that must make you feel good when people come back to you and say, man, you made it better. I mean, I'm sure every actor, there's so much shit that goes on like Twitter and all that, where people everyone's a critic, but it must be great as an actor to hear people just really appreciate your work.
I think that's the most important. Those are the most important critics, and everybody has a job to do, and I respect what critics have to say, and the job that they have to do, and the number of stars or whatever it is that they give shows and whatnot. I mean, I respect that, and it's their opinion. I don't often agree, but that's also it's also part of being in the public eye and doing what we do. But definitely the criticism from somebody who was actually there is more valuable to me.
Now, how was towards the end of I'm not going to say what episode. There's a great fight scene. Now, did you have a stunt double in that, or was that you? Because that was one of those fight scenes you go, hey, this is really good. But I mean, was that you? Were you? I mean, if so, how do you? I mean, do you have to train for that? Because it's just like, holy shit, he's getting his ass kicked.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Omar and I, our fight choreographer, he's the head of our stunt team. He's who you see there fighting. Who I'm fighting against. We spent a lot of time talking about what that would be like, and what the fight would entail, just in terms of, a framework for it, sort of a story of the fight, right? Like one character is dominant, and then the other character, fights back, and it seems like, the other character is going to be defeated, and then ultimately something else happens. So there's like a movement with a story within the story of the fight. So that was very important to us. Something that's kind of, I guess, an ego thing for me. But perhaps it goes beyond ego. I feel like whenever there's something physical, I enjoy experiencing what that is, because I think it informs the performance, and I think it informs the character. So, a lot of my job is, learning lines, researching, understanding, the given circumstances in the scene, being present in a scene, and really being able to play off of my scene partners, taking direction, all of that stuff. But one of the things that people don't see, and they shouldn't, because it's not something that is interesting really. But since you brought it up, as actors, you need to sort of stay physically ready to do something like that, to do a fight scene that essentially takes the better part of the day. Take after take after take. Getting thrown around, a lot of it is very safe, but you do get your bumps and your bruises and, your cuts and your scrapes, and we certainly did. I mean, that whole ship was moving as we were, shooting. We were actually on a ship, very, very close quarters with a very large man. And he was, he's a professional, and he never hurt me at all. But there are moments where you try. I had a fight coach once say the acting genie takes over, right? Where you want it just a little bit more violent. You want it just a little faster. You want it to be that much more real and brutal. And when you reach for those things, good things happen, but also bad things can happen too. I think we were very fortunate that that we were able to elevate that fight scene and elevate the stakes. And I think that informs Roman as he walks through the door at the end of that fight scene. Spoiler alert. As he walks through that door, having done the scene informed how Roman walks in, and it told me something about, the kind of soldier, the kind of father, the kind of preparation that Roman had when he was in the Bay of Pigs, and what he's capable of.
Now, when did you get this acting bug? You've been on. It's funny when you look. I look at IMDb, and I have a lot of character actors on, and they have like hundreds of credits. But you've been on like from series to series to series. I mean, you're blessed. I mean, you look at it and you go, "Wow," because early on, you had what was it, Man, Woman, and Dogs, and then you had Cold Case, and you had SVU, Mayans, all these things. When did you know? I know you ended up getting your MFA in New York, but when did you know you wanted to act? Because Miami, you don't think of Miami as like acting central. You think, I mean, there's actors everywhere, but what turned you on to acting? What got you started with that bug that you ended up knowing you wanted to pursue it the rest of your life?
Man, yeah, I mean, Miami is not where you would traditionally think. It's not Los Angeles, it's not New York, it's not Chicago. It's where there are some true magnets for actors, or training grounds for actors. But Miami has produced some phenomenal talent and continues to. I think I've always been creative. I love to draw or to paint. I love to create things. I get when there's not a lot to do. My wife says that she doesn't really enjoy going on vacation with me because I'll sit by the pool and I'm literally like, okay, that's it. We've seen the pool. We've had a drink. Let's rent a car, or let's rent a Jeep, or let's rent a motorcycle. And let's hit the road. Let's go explore. But yeah, art has always been a way for me to sort of stay active. I think creatively, intellectually, and that sort of translated from drawing, painting, and then I sort of found acting through music, because in elementary school I had this fantastic teacher, Miss Asako Brummett, and is Asian American, and she ran the choir, and so we had to take music class. And she would bring each student up one by one, and she would hit notes. And she was like, "Can you hit this note?" Right? And she would pluck it out on the piano. And so I guess as she did the scales, I hit the notes fairly well. She was like, "Would you, want to participate in the choir?" And so I was a baseball player. I was involved in a million other things, and so that was just one thing that I was like, "Sure, yeah, I'll do that." And so I did that for a few years. And then in sixth grade, she said, we're going to do a musical. I'd never done a musical. I'd never been on stage before. I'd been on stage with the choir, but never like acting. And so we did that in sixth grade. It was the tracers of the lost parts of speech. There were adverbs and nouns and verbs running around the stage. I mean, it was dynamic and incredible. It was just like Mayans. Like, there was a high body count. No, there wasn't. It was an elementary school musical, but anyway, so from there was a teacher who was sitting in the audience. My mother was a teacher as well. She's retired now, but my mother was sitting in the audience, and there was a teacher who approached my mother after the performance and said, "Was that your son?" And my mother acknowledged that it was, and that this teacher was a drama teacher at a performing magnet school for junior high, and that she was very interested in me attending that school. And so my mother came to me and she asked me what I thought, and I was like, absolutely. I mean, somebody wants me to do that. Yes. And my mother said, Danny, I think maybe not. I think maybe you go to the local junior high and you take acting classes at the local junior high and you stay open. You like a lot of different things. I mean, you want to play baseball, you're interested in so many other things, and you do those things, with a lot of passion. I would feel, she said, as your mom, I would feel weird pigeonholing you in seventh grade. And so I didn't go to that magnet school, and I still did, a ton of plays and scenes and acting classes in junior high. And, that's kind of where it took me. I mean, from junior high to high school, doing, again, a lot of stage time and a lot of plays, still, trying to play baseball, but having my theater teacher tell me, you have to be in rehearsal. You could either be in rehearsal or you could be at practice, but you can't be at both. And, my girlfriend was in theater. So I was like, I since married her. So, I think I chose pretty well. I still, I would have loved to have played baseball. It's still one of my passions, but that's kind of how acting started.
Now, how do you end up in New York? How do you end up going to school? You go to what, it was Florida, Florida. You go to school. You go to college. You go to college in Florida. Is your major acting? Do you go as an acting major, or do you go as something else?
I started off as an engineering major, but I was on scholarship through the theater program. So I was both. It was going to be a double major in engineering and theater. And then, the math got really hard in the engineering track, and so then I went to pre-law, thinking that maybe that would be the way to go, because in my family, we didn't have really any artists, who could, I could really lean on and speak to about, being a professional actor. And so my parents, especially my father, was incredibly worried that I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. Like, acting is fun, but it's not a profession, right? And I understand that, coming from, having to choose a profession that was, I think in his eyes, and maybe in most people's eyes, more, dependable, more, something more solid, that you can count on. I think that his point of view was engineering, medicine, or law would be the way to go. But the theater kept pulling me back in, and I graduated through the honors program, studying for my LSAT to go to law school, with a double major in theater. So I got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts from FIU. I graduated through the honors program as well. And then I remember the morning when I sat down with my father and I said, if I get into one of the top 3 master's programs in the country, I'm going. And he said, how are you going to pay for that? And I said, the same way I was going to pay for law school. I was going to have to figure it out anyway. So, I ended up going to NYU, to the Tisch School of the Arts, and earning my MFA from the Tisch School. And FIU was the foundation for, I think, the majority of really thinking about acting as a profession. But NYU really changed my life.
So when you get out of college, because everyone says, when you go to school for acting, you know how to act. You're versed in that. But you don't know the business part. You really don't know how to get an agent. You don't know how to do this, because they don't teach you that, because you're in there for theory and you're in there for, as you said, you're an actor. How quick till you start getting work when you graduate from Tisch?
Everybody has a sort of a different journey. My class was an incredibly talented class. I mean, I think I learned as much from my classmates as I did from the faculty, and so I feel like graduating from Tisch and out of that class and the classes surrounding my class, so the students who were there a couple years ahead of me, and the students a couple of years after me who I saw perform and create on stage, that was incredibly formative. The idea, the concept of seeking out failure that failure was the biggest catalyst for growth. That being able to face the fear and do it anyway, that was brave. Bravery wasn't the absence of fear. It was the presence of fear, but doing it anyway. And then accepting the failure when that came as well, and learning from that, and still being brave enough to try it again, right? That is what I think maybe that springboard to the professional world. That helped quite a bit. And, I was very fortunate. We would do showcases. We did a showcase in New York. And out of the showcase, I was able to secure a manager and an agent. And I still am represented by the same manager and agent to this day. So, I feel incredibly grateful and lucky that it worked out that way. And, thankfully, I think because of that and because of the foundation, like I said, that NYU provided, I started to work in theater pretty immediately. I mean, I did Shakespeare in the Park a few times. I did Williamstown Theater Festival, a workshop at Lincoln Center. So I was getting, a fair amount of work on stage. And then moved out to LA briefly for pilot season and booked a pilot, my first pilot season. I was Men, Women, and Dogs, and that got picked up. We did 13 episodes. And I still have very fond memories of that with Bill Bellamy, and we had a blast. I learned a lot. That was like my I consider that my fourth year of NYU, because we didn't do a lot of film work. We didn't do a lot of soundstage work, and I learned a lot of the terminology and the timing and the marks and the camera movement and all of that. I learned in a very truncated 13 episodes of Men, Women, and Dogs.
Now, how did Cold Case come along? Because, I moved back from LA. I live outside Philadelphia. And so I remember there was one episode and they were at the Cherry Hill Country Club, and I grew up in Cherry Hill. And I was like, oh man, whenever I see it, you growing up in the area, when they said they're going down to Schuylkill, you know that. Or when they're doing the different, like the kid who wins the lottery, he's like from the crappy area of Kensington. I mean, you really related to it. And I always related to that show. And to this day, I mean, I've been with my wife for 12 years. We've been married for 5. But we would always watch the show together when she moved out to LA. So even now we watch it. But how did that role come about? And it's funny because you like your character, but you're very brooding. Like Jeremy Ratchford has been on the show, and he was just like Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, goofy guy. He was like, he's like, hey, But for you, it's a brooding character. And from coming from a show with Bill Bellamy, the exact opposite turn that shows your acting ability is to be a brooding character when you come from something with Bill, which is a sitcom. So how did that role come about? Was it a long audition process? And did you think the show would run so long? Because I love it because the flashbacks. It was funny. I was watching it one night and there was like Robert Romanus was on an episode and my friend Reed Diamond was on an episode, and like all these guys I knew, like 3 episodes in a row, were the killers. And I'm like, holy crap, they've all been on my show. But what was the process for you getting that role? And what did you think on that first season? Do you think it would be a hit? Because it ran for a while.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you and Joanne on 12 years. That's awesome. Cold Case really came about. We'd have to take a few steps back because Cold Case really happened largely because of The Shield. And the reason that was because when I auditioned for The Shield, Rebecca Mangieri and Barbara Fiorentino, who both were the casting directors on The Shield, I went in and the producers said, no, he's not right. He's too, he's too clean. He's too, pretty. He's too all of these things, right? And I was like, no, I'm not pretty. I'm not clean. I'm none of that. I'm none of that. Just give me 2 more days, and can I please go back in and re-audition? And because of Rebecca and Barbara, who fought for me to come back in, I was able to get that role. While I was shooting that, the director who killed Armadillo Quintero off, so that I can go and play Desi Arnaz for CBS, right? So I got the role of Desi Arnaz while I was shooting The Shield, and I had to, go into The Shield and tell them, look, I apologize. Sorry, I know that maybe you had further plans for the character, but Desi Arnaz is an icon to me, and to be able to play Desi is incredibly meaningful. And so they understood and very graciously killed me off. And the director who killed me off was Paris Barkley. So I say all of these things because it's sort of the perfect storm for what happened on Cold Case. So I received a call saying that they're casting Lily Rush's partner. And the casting directors are Barbara Fiorentino and Rebecca Mangieri, right? And the director who was directing the episode where they were introducing my character was Paris Barkley. And so they all had a hand in recommending me because they had just worked with me on The Shield. And because I had just, played Desi Arnaz for CBS, everybody sort of signed off on me simultaneously, except for Warner Brothers. They really didn't know, who I was. And so I had to go in and audition for Warner Brothers and, their executives, and Peter Roth and Meredith Steen, who didn't really know me either, who was the creator and showrunner for Cold Case, wanted for me to audition as well. And so it's kind of how everything aligned for me to take part in that. Now, as to why Scotty Valens was so dark and brooding, I don't know. I think maybe, Jeremy had the sort of, he's hilarious. Jeremy Ratchford is just one of the most naturally gifted, comedians I've ever come across. I mean, he kept us all laughing all the time. And so I think maybe that base was covered already, but it was such an exceptional experience shooting 7 seasons of Cold Case. I'm incredibly proud of our show. I love procedural cop dramas. I grew up on them. And so, to be on CBS with that team and to be telling a story in a very nuanced artistic way, like you said, with flashbacks and music and wardrobe and vernacular and film stock and, music, all of that, I think sort of reinvented that kind of storytelling.
Now, when that show, after the first season, you're already going through one show that didn't get picked up. Okay, you had the pilot, but you got the pilot early. Do doubts start going through your mind, like waiting for them to give you that call? Because as an actor, I always think, I hear so many stories of someone's on a great show and it lasts 1 season. Or like my friend Lombardo Bayar was on Murder in the First, and all of a sudden, executives change. The show's gone. Was that going through your head as a young actor because you were on this show and everything lined up for you to get it? The casting, the director, it's a great show, the great ensemble. After that first season, how long till you got the second season?
Man, I don't remember exactly with Cold Case as to how long we had to wait, but there was always the anticipation of, you do the first 13 episodes, and are we going to get the back 9? Right? There was always sort of that conversation. Are we only going to get half a season? Like, what are the numbers like? Right? There's always that pressure, and then once, let's say you get the full season, you do 22 or maybe 24, then you also then start to wonder, are we going to get another season? Right? There was, I think, 1 year that they picked us up for 2 seasons, and that was incredible. But that feeling never really goes away. I'm experiencing it right now with Hotel Cocaine. We did, 1 season, I feel successfully. I feel like we really, accomplished a lot, given that it is a period drama. And I'm incredibly proud of what we did, and incredibly proud across the board of this incredibly hardworking crew of artists, from across the world. This ensemble, our producers, the writing, post, with all the music and the edits is fantastic. But, you're still sort of at the whim of, decisions being made that we're not privy to. That's not something that is uncommon. But I have a lot of faith in MGM Plus and in the people who really support our show there. And I feel incredibly positive given the response from our fans. And I'm so grateful. So many people have reached out and have enjoyed, what we've done in season 1 and are calling for a season 2.
Well, you should get a season 2. And that's the thing I was going to say also with Cold Case. When you left Cold Case, after the 3rd or 4th season, the crew's all cool because they know they're getting picked up. It's like they go, okay, we're going to get some of that residual money. So I was going to ask you, what is it like when you, after Cold Case, you eventually ended on SVU, which was also had already been on, and their crew was like, it's cool. What is that like to go to transition to a show that you don't have to deal with the bullshit of Cold Case, wondering, are we going to get picked up or not? You're going to a show where you're like, okay, man, this is cool. It must be great for an actor to walk in. For one, the crew knows everybody. And, as you said, Mariska's great to work with. And that's also a show that they're always getting new people. I mean, people come and go in that show. So what is that like to transition from a show starting off to a show that's already established? Is it hard as a new actor, or do you just go in and just say, I'm going to make it my own?
Yeah, I think that you definitely feel like you have to make it your own. There aren't a lot of things in this business that are easy. It's working with Mariska, that was easy. She makes it, you look forward every day to coming to set, and to sort of playing, the scene, but also, being able to play after the scene, because it's just a fun atmosphere. It's strict, and there's a lot of business, and it's word for word. You can't really, go off on tangents. It's very exacting, but the experience was fantastic. The pressure there being that, there was a huge transition in the show when I came on. And, I think that there was a question as to whether the show was going to, be able to outlive that transition, right? And, thankfully it has, and it's doing incredibly well. I still have a lot of friends on the show, and I root for them. It was an incredible experience for me to be in New York for 4 years, to come back with a job rather than as, a starving student, to come back with a job and with kids and a wife. And it was a fantastic way to experience the city. I miss New York. I miss a lot of the people on that show, and it was fascinating too to have been on Cold Case for 7 seasons, and then be on a show that is almost the opposite of Cold Case in terms of, I mean, there's plenty of artistry involved in Law and Order, but it's pretty hard scrabble, right? It's gritty. There aren't really a lot of there's not a lot of fluff on the show. It's like dung dung, and you are on the street, right? And there's not a lot of fat. There's not a lot of transitional moments, and so that was interesting to then all of a sudden be on a show that had that sort of an atmosphere. But yeah, I absolutely loved my time there.
So you've gotten so you do two great shows like that, and then all of a sudden Mayans comes along, which is once again completely different. But was that offered to you, or did you go in? And once again, I mean, you're working with a great. I mean, you've been. It's you can't say lucky because you're talented, but a lot of times people who get on the show don't. But how did Mayans come about? And that's a totally different character from the police. It must have been exciting as an actor because you're like, okay, I played this detective, I played this. So how did Mayans? Was that an audition, or did they say we want to offer you because you had come off 2 shows, or how did that work?
So Mayans comes about partially because I had worked with Kurt Sutter on The Shield. And not only had I worked with Kurt Sutter on The Shield, but I had also worked with Emilio Rivera, who was the head Mayan on Sons of Anarchy. We had played brothers on The Shield. So there was already a certain DNA that was, at play. I was looking for a show that would be more stark, that the tone would be potentially, more, I think maybe less network oriented and something more along the lines of an independent film where you could show violence and sexuality and use harsh language and sort of change not only the perception of me in the industry, right, of the roles that I could play, going away from being a detective and being a detective on a network, procedural, and jumping into something that maybe on the other side of the law, right, instead of being law enforcement, playing an outlaw of sorts. And so when Mayans came around, it felt like maybe the right thing to invest my time and effort into. And so having conversations about that, Kurt and FX, who were both on The Shield, were interested. But because I had spent so much time away from that genre, that world, right? They wanted to see me read, and so I think there's some actors who feel insulted, especially if they've been on shows that have been successful, to be like, wait, why should I have to read? I oftentimes feel the opposite, where it's an opportunity. Like, you know what? I'm not sure that I'm right for this role either. I want to try him on, right? And so being able to walk into the room, and the directing producer was Norberto Barba, who's also Cuban-American, and I'd met him on Law and Order on SVU. So he was in the room, so I knew him well. I knew Kurt, and obviously it was for FX. So there was a certain home court advantage. and it worked out. I went in, I felt confident, and it was Miguel Galindo was a character that scared me because I felt like I wasn't sure, not whether I could play him, but I wasn't sure whether an audience would accept Nick Amaro and Scotty Valens playing this, being this person now. But at the end of the day, I couldn't think about that. I just had to play the character.
Now, how did you end up directing some episodes of that?
How did I end up directing?
Yeah, did you just ask? Or I mean, that's like, I always said, like, some people go up and ask, or some people follow the director around, but was that something you had always been interested in doing? Because you said you've always been creative back when you were a kid, drawing stuff. That's sort of directing. If you write, you sort of, everything's in your head. But how did you end up directing, and did you enjoy it? And is it something that you would like to do more of?
I would. I really enjoyed it. It goes back to Cold Case and writing or co-writing 2 Cold Case episodes. The opportunity to just expand, my artistic experience, right? My creative experience of challenging myself, goes back to NYU. Are you going to fail? And if you fail, fuck it, man. You learn from it and you move forward. Thankfully, on Cold Case, I was surrounded by some incredible writers and writers' room and producers who really informed my experience as a writer on Cold Case. So much so that I wrote a second episode, or co-wrote a second episode. And I think had we been picked up for an 8th season, I likely would have directed, because I was shadowing directors 2 or 3 seasons into our run, because it wasn't something I'd always wanted to do, because honestly I didn't even know what a director really did, right? I was mostly on stage, but as I had more experience in front of the camera, I became more and more curious about it. I directed my brother's a fantastic musician in Miami, shout out to Paco, and I directed his first music video while I was shooting Cold Case. And then when I went to SVU, I did voice my interest to direct very early on. And so that was one of the things that actually attracted me to go and play another detective, was to go to SVU and potentially, finish that cycle of, I've written a couple of episodes or co-written a couple of episodes, maybe now I'll be able to direct. Ultimately, I was able to shadow a number of directors, Norberto Barba being one of them, at SVU, but that opportunity never materialized at SVU. So when I went to Mayans, it was one of those things that, Elgin and I, we were sitting together at an event, and I looked over at Elgin James and I said to him, I have an interest in this, and Elgin is the kind of person who sets up a scaffolding. It was like, you need to watch these films, and there were films from all over the world, a lot of subtitles, very interesting, and you need to watch all of these series, again, international, and you need to read these books, and then you need to shadow all of these directors who are directing Mayans, and then you need to ask me questions about the things that you're watching and the things that you're reading and whatnot. So that was kind of my, film school, was that. Reading about theory, directing theory, film theory, cinematography, editing, lighting, and then watching all of these things, and then watching him direct and being able to say, Elgin, why did you set the camera up over there? I have a shot list that I prepared on my own before you started shooting, and I put the camera over here. And he was like, well, why didn't you tell me about that camera over here? That was a pretty damn good idea, right? Next time, just tell me those things. So Elgin is one of those people, one of these artists who elevates other artists and gives artists opportunities if they earn it, right? If they show, that drive and the follow through. And so I was able to direct 2 episodes of Mayans, again, with, the fingerprints of our incredible crew and cast and writers and producers all over all the episodes. But, directing is something that I find fascinating. And it's maybe one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And it's as much about leadership. And when I say leadership, I don't mean we're going this way. It's not quite that. It's more about trying to bring out the best in everyone by creating an atmosphere of creativity. And again, going back to, what I learned in school, allowing people to fail, giving them an opportunity, whether they're in the crew or whether they're in the cast, an opportunity to create within the framework of the script and of our story, and potentially push past things that we've done in the past so that we can create something fresh for our audience and for ourselves. So to me, that's, my experience of directing, why I feel like that search never ends, right? That sort of creative energy of being able to, assemble a group of people and sort of all go in one direction, but bringing everybody's sort of ingenuity, artistry along with you.
Okay, I got one final question. You've had a great career, still going. We're knocking wood for season 2 of Hotel Cocaine. But when you look back on your career, what are a few things that make you proud? Not like, oh, I attained this. What some things that make you proud? We always want to feel a sense of pride on certain things. But what are something when you look back at your career that make you proud? I've talked to an actor who's proud that his acting enabled him to pay his 2 children through college. Okay, that makes him proud. His craft that he learned, that makes him. But what are something that makes you proud? Because you've had a very successful career. You've been on hit shows. But when push comes to shove, what makes you proud?
Man, I've been unsuccessfully trying to keep my answer short. But you ask such great questions that, it causes me to sort of expand on it. And this question is no different. There's so many things that make me proud. I mean, I too feel incredibly grateful and fortunate to be able to send my 2 sons to, some of the best schools in the world. And being able to help my family. That's something that makes me proud. But the first thing that kind of jumped into my head was my wife and I produced, I wrote, directed. My wife has also acted in this, and so did I. We created this short film, from this very laptop that I'm using right now, sitting in this very room, just kind of what is the story that I need to tell, and why do I have to be the one to tell it? And so Unión de Reyes was born from that. Union of Kings. It's a short film. It's been making the festival run. We've been very fortunate to make it into some fantastic festivals, and very well received by audiences. It's not yet available. We have one last festival that I can't really talk about because they haven't announced yet. But we hope that we're able to put it on a site to share it with the public. But it's not an autobiographical story, but it's a very personal story. It's a Cuban American story. It's set in Miami. It is very much Spanglish, and something that I put a lot of myself into. And so to be able to have this piece that maybe culminates the writing, the directing, the acting, the producing, all in one piece, all in 34 minutes, is something I'm very proud of, just as a piece.
Well, that's awesome, man. I want to thank you for coming on. I'm a fan, and as I said, people, go watch Hotel Cocaine and get MGM Plus, because Godfathers of Harlem and From are both very good shows too. Go on to IMDb, look up Danny's work, go back and watch all the shows. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find 1,021 episodes there. You can email me at coopertalk.net. Starting in 2 weeks, look up for Coop's Comedy Corner. I talk with some of my fellow stand-up comics. These are national headliners and comics who have gone into TV writing. They have their generation before me, but they have some great stories. So that's going to be coming on YouTube on the Trainwreck Comedy Network out of Philadelphia. And that's about it. Follow me on Twitter at Cooper Talk. You're the real Danny Pino on Twitter, right?
The Danny Pino, I believe, and El Danny Pino on Instagram.
So people follow Danny, follow me. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time. Can I get